In 2010, the trucking and shipping industry spent over $101 billion on diesel fuel alone. And as a result, many of the businesses within this industry are actively searching for new ways to fuel their fleets and better manage these costs. One such alternative is natural gas. In fact, the natural gas vehicle industry is currently experiencing a 7.5% growth rate. Now, good afternoon. My name is Koji Moy, alongside Connor Watkins and Devin Jagir, and we're Alternative Transportation Specialists, or ATS. And today we're here to present to you about a product that will allow investors to capture growth within the accelerating natural gas vehicle industry. Before we get to the product itself, I really want to address how this idea came to fruition and the needs that our product will directly address. Currently within the United States, the price of traditional fuels such as diesel or gasoline are rising fast and currently hovering around $4 per gallon. Additionally, the Energy Information Administration expects these prices to remain constant or perhaps even increase through 2013 due to political pressures and supply concerns. Furthermore, there are new EPA regulations that these businesses within these high fleet, high volume of fuel industries are facing. In fact, Pipe Research recently concluded that in 2011, businesses within the trucking and shipping industry face an average of $15,000 in EPA regulations taxes per diesel engine. So, with the rise of these taxes, taxes and input prices, lots of businesses are actively looking towards natural gas as a viable option for fuel. And the reason is this. First of all, natural gas is a clean burning fuel, thereby allowing businesses to get around these EPA regulations taxes. Now secondly, natural gas is currently sitting at its 10-year low in price. And that is based on a recent discovery that the U.S. has over 100 years of natural gas domestic supply. Now what this also ensures is that this price should remain relatively stable within the next 10 to 20 years. Now, aside from natural gas's inherent characteristics that make it beneficial, it is also receiving increasing support in both Washington, D.C. and within the business community at large. In Washington, D.C., the Natural Gas Act of 2011 and 2012 received majority support in both the House and the Senate. And what this bill is designed to do is provide strong incentives towards consumers and businesses to switch their fleets or consumer vehicles to natural gas. Now within the business community at large, investors such as T. Boone Pickens have begun investing considerable amounts of their own wealth in building this, America's Natural Gas Highway, which is a series of fueling stations across the nation designed to help support this growing industry. In fact, of the fueling stations listed here, every single one will be ready to run or ready to use by the start of 2013. Now, while we do see a lot of growing trends towards natural gas, we do recognize that there are still some serious barriers that this industry needs to address before natural gas can actually become a viable option. The first of which is the low mileage per tank that a natural gas vehicle can actually run versus traditional fuels. As one might expect, natural gas vehicles do not go as far as on mileage per tank basis as traditional engines such as diesel or gasoline. Now second of all, since it is an emerging industry, there are limited technologies within the industry. Most notably is within this America's Natural Gas Highway. So currently, depending on where you bought your natural gas vehicle from, that manufacturer would use a certain pressure grade, and the pressure grade varies from manufacturer to manufacturer. And thus, with this infrastructure and fueling stations within the U.S., there is no uniform pressure grade, but rather they are all different based on which manufacturer they have kind of worked with the most. So depending on where you buy your natural gas vehicle from, you will be limited as far as how many fueling stations you can actually use. So ATS has actually identified these concerns and these barriers, and we are proud to present the ATS compression system. And now what this is a fuel compression system that increases your fuel capacity by 40%. It also addresses infrastructure concerns directly by allowing consumers to use any fueling station that they so choose. Now, the way that this product works is as the fuel enters the natural gas vehicle, it's actually compressed, and artificially compressed to a much higher density, thereby taking up much less volume, thereby allowing for the increase in fuel capacity of 40%. Now, as that fuel is pushed out to the engine, it is retailored to meet the manufacturer's pressure standards. So therefore, through this mechanism, users of natural gas that have our product installed can use any fueling station that they so choose. Now, a couple benefits from a more business standpoint that aren't as obvious just by looking at product description is one, it's simple and inexpensive. These cryogenic tubes are very small, allowing them to be shipped very easily, and furthermore, it's inexpensive in the fact of time and money. The cost right now is running about $1,000 cost reduction, and when you look at the component piece versus the entire natural gas engine and/or vehicle, you're talking about $1,000 versus $30,000 to $60,000. And it also can be installed in about 3 hours by any licensed auto mechanic. And it's also commercially viable. What we're getting at here is that it can be used by any natural gas manufacturer. And with a little bit more about where we're heading with this product and the target market that we want to directly address, here's Mr. Watkins.
Thanks, Koji. Focusing on Koji's last point, that's exactly who we are targeting, natural gas vehicle manufacturers. Specifically, we've narrowed our target market down to natural gas vehicle manufacturers who specialize in the production of medium and heavy-duty fleet transportation vehicles. These vehicles range from long-haul trucks to public city transit vehicles. We're targeting this market because natural gas vehicle manufacturers are selling to customers who are constantly demanding the need for natural gas vehicles. These customers constantly use and burn a ton of fuel and are constantly replacing vehicles, seeking for new and better ways to manage fuel consumption. Aside from benefits and wages, large transportation companies' largest expense is fuel. So as you can see why it's such a big issue for them, figuring out ways to become more efficient and run their vehicles much more efficiently. And that's why a growing trend in the United States right now is vehicle conversion to natural gas. As you can see from our graph right here, the average per vehicle fuel cost for a heavy-duty truck ran on diesel fuel was $70,000 spent on fuel per vehicle alone in 1 year, whereas a liquefied natural gas vehicle spent $40,000 on fuel. So that's $30,000 saved just by operating a liquefied natural gas vehicle. To give you guys an example of a few companies who have already seen the benefits of this and began converting their fleets are companies such as UPS, AT&T, Frito-Lay, Waste Management Incorporated out of Los Angeles. And those are just a few of the larger name companies right now who have solid benefits of converting their fleets to liquefied natural gas. Conceptually, this is where we, alternative transportation specialists, plan to position ourselves within the natural gas vehicle supply chain. We plan on providing our products to natural gas vehicle manufacturers who in turn will sell a modified, more efficient vehicle to the end consumer, the transit vehicle operators such as UPS, AT&T. In an industry with very little brand loyalty and few but large in size competitors, the company with the most efficient product is going to gain the most market share no matter the name of the brand. So from that, we've derived our value proposition. The ATS compression system will benefit engine manufacturers in a market lacking brand loyalty, where the company with the most efficient product will capture the most market share. And with that, I want to hand it over to Ms. Jaguar to talk about our business strategy.
Mr. Watkins. So up to this point, we've kind of talked about the fundamentals of our business, the industry, our target market. Now I'm going to go to the technical aspects, starting with our business strategy. Now this graphic here outlines the 4 main milestones of our business, starting with business formation. Now the main thing we're going to pursue in business formation is very low startup costs. As Mr. Moy stated earlier, this is a growing industry. That means competition is growing, and we believe we need low startup costs so we can enter the industry as fast as possible to build market share. Now, to do this, we are going to pursue a variable cost structure. And part of that cost structure will be our employee compensation structure. We're going to pursue a profit sharing structure. And how this is going to work is employees are going to be paid 10% below industry averages. However, they're going to have the possibility to make up to 10% above industry averages annually. This will be based on the profitability of the company. Now what this will do is this will decrease our fixed operating costs and allow us to have lower startup costs, while also providing incentives to our employees to increase the demand for our product. Which leads directly into our product promotion phase. Now there are 3 avenues that we're going to pursue to promote our product. First being trade shows. We're going to attend these trade shows where our customers will be and demonstrate the abilities of our product. Following this, we're going to attend government meetings. As Mr. Moy stated earlier, there's legislation right now in Washington that could benefit natural gas vehicle manufacturers. So we know they're going to be there paying attention to what is going on. So we're going to be right there beside them, right beside our customers as well. Finally, we're going to pursue direct selling. As Mr. Watkins stated earlier, there are large companies in this industry. And so we can approach them directly to show them what exactly our product can do for them. Following this promotion phase, we're going to lead into our revenue growth cycle. We're projecting about a 12% annual growth for the next 5 years. This will yield a 1-year burn rate, so our company will generate positive cash flow after 1 year alone. Now, after about 5 years of operations, we plan to essentially exit the industry. As Mr. Once again, relating back to the growth of this industry, there's going to be a lot of competition. Even the natural gas vehicle manufacturers themselves, they're going to be developing technology to combat ours. And since we need a low startup cost to pursue and to gain this market share, we haven't budgeted for research and development or an engineering team. So we believe after about 5 years of operation, our product is going to need to be further developed to maintain its competitiveness. And at that point, we plan to sell our company to someone who will further support the product development. So to kind of show the 12% growth, we have some projected financials here. First, our annual profit. I'll direct your attention to our sales. Sales are going to be around roughly $3 million in year 1, proceeding up to $5 million by year 3. Now, though this seems like a large number, it's important to note that our unit product cost is about $1,300, so our unit sales are much more reasonable than it seems here. Now, as you can see, our expenses are a fairly large proportion of sales, but that's because, once again, we're pursuing a variable cost structure to decrease our startup costs. However, if we do look at our profit, you see it does increase annually as a proportion of sales, and that is just because, as all businesses do, we have our fixed costs. Now, if you look at our 3-year net income chart, you can see this kind of reflects the burn rate I mentioned earlier. After about 1 year of operation, moving into the 2nd year, we are going to experience a positive net income that will be increasing out through year 3. Now, to support this business strategy I've outlined and support this 12% revenue growth each year, we're going to need an effective employee workforce. This graphic here outlines our organizational structure. Now, the top 3 tiers, as of now, we plan to hold ourselves, the original owners of the business. Personally, I'll be graduating with a degree in finance. I've worked for a corporation, so I know how businesses work. Maybe on a more personal note, my family, my parents, have their own startup that's a $20 million a year business, which they run with 7 employees, which is very similar to this. So they have agreed to be our advisors in this endeavor. Mr. Moy has had an internship in Washington, D.C. He's worked in the Senate, so he can work with the lobbyists and stay on top of legislation that will involve natural gas vehicles. Mr. Watkins will specialize in HR. However, he has worked for a distribution company for the last 4 years, a distribution company which is an industry that is converting to natural gas vehicles. So he'll be able to handle the production side of our business. Now, though we do believe we can meet the requirements for these positions, we acknowledge that we need a little more help. Specifically, we need a technology expert. We need someone who knows how this technology works, can explain it to our customers, and can help our customers implement it. Furthermore, we need a marketing expert. We're looking for someone who's involved in the alternative transportation fuels industry. So they already know the customers that are out there and can help them target them. That can help us target them that much quicker. Following this, we need a general office employee, someone to kind of hold the business practices together. Right now, we're forecasting 1 from the beginning, but that could obviously change as sales progress. So all this leads us to the investment opportunity we're presenting today. Now, as we've shown you, within this industry, there's a growing demand for natural gas vehicles. We've outlined a target customer, the natural gas vehicle manufacturers, whose product will benefit from ours. So what we need now is a little bit more help to get this going. We're looking for investors. We're looking for investors who are passionate about taking this business plan and turning it into a reality as we are. As it stands, for our company, we have the product that's been patented and tested. We have the support of the original engineering team. They want this to be commercialized as much as we do. Now, what we forecasted that we're going to need is roughly $300,000 to start this business. Now, I know this seems low, but remember, that is the goal of our variable cost structure. We believe that we can finance about 35% of this cost through either corporate loans or private loans between the 3 of us. Furthermore, so we are going to need about 65% of this $300,000, so a minimum $170,000 in financing to create this business. And what we are offering in exchange for that is a 47% equity in our firm. So at this point, I'd like to open the floor up to any questions you have about this opportunity or about our business or product in general. Thank you.
What's the exit strategy as a potential investor?
As a percent, you'll receive, with the 40% share in the company, you will receive 47% of whatever you sell the business for.
According to that map we put up there initially, the potential of long haul going across Montana, North Dakota, they better have a team of horses. This whole thing is how rapid is the expansion of being able to have the availability of natural gas.
How rapid? We're looking for natural gas. If you have, let's see, this is the expected growth of just the use of this fuel in general. Now, the graphic you saw earlier that showed the fueling station across the nation, kind of where we're targeting, what we're positioning is the main demand for liquefied natural gas is actually on the western coast right now, and that's where most of those fueling stations are. So, and that's mostly going to be transit buses, and you'll have some like short-term transportation, but the long-haul trucking is, as you said, still a little bit.
You've done market research that primarily in the west. Southern, west, that's the density of the population.
Yeah, and especially Salt Lake to LA can now run long-haul 18-wheelers primarily on natural gas powered vehicles because there's so many fueling stations that have sprouted up along that interstate.
As long as they're not going to Montana.
Besides just the conversion over, the typical natural gas that we're solving, are there other transition issues that a truck driver would have to face in terms of converting from diesel to natural gas? Technically?
No, they run, it's basically the same type of vehicle running. The main problem is the infrastructure, and so the fueling station. So the one problem would be, finding somewhere to refuel your truck. The truck's going to run the same exact way, besides the fact that you're going to need to find somewhere to
So
fuel it.
that's the only barrier to researching everything?
Yeah, the main barrier that they have identified in the research that we have done is this. I mean, there are supporting infrastructure as it stands right now, especially on the West Coast. However, this huge barrier of not being able to fill up at every single fueling station is really one major barrier holding people back. But that's the biggest that we identified.
And can you talk a little bit more about that technology?
The product itself, the questions?
Yeah.
Let's just go back to that graphic. So how it works today, currently, the fuel tanks themselves are called cryogenic tanks. And so in natural gas vehicles, that's what controls the pressure of the fluid, because the natural gas has to be compressed into a liquid state. So right now it's kept at about 110 psi, which is the pressure level. So what we are proposing is to take cryogenic tubes here, so when the fuel comes into this tank, it can be decreased to an even lower pressure, about 40% less than the 110 it's kept at now. But since the engine requires that 110 pressure, we will have a second tube here. So when the fuel goes back to the engine, it'll be, I guess, the pressure will be decreased once again, so the fuel can be combusted with the engine.
I meant more about how do you know this technology works?
We've been communicating with the engineering team. The product was developed by the Idaho National Laboratory, and they've been focusing a lot on natural gas for the last 7 years. So this product has been tested. They have a vehicle that's running on it right now in Yellowstone National Park. The problem up to this point is there just hasn't been really a demand for natural gas vehicles. I mean, since we found the overabundance of supply of natural gas, this has become much more feasible.
Your system requires a whole package, I would assume, includes a different tank that comes with it.
It actually it uses the same tank. So what we add are a few heat regulators and the additional cryogenic tube. So it's more of just an addition to what is already being produced.
The pressure and variation doesn't have, one of the questions I thought of is the whole thing of law, or admitted to get a little bit out of whack.
Only half the time. Is it a retrofit model, or is your ideal distribution model to sell to the engine manufacturers so that it's put in when vehicles put together in the first place?
The best way is to sell to engine manufacturers, just because then we have a more focused target market. We don't have to spend as much money doing accessing all the various load companies that are pursuing this.
So who has relationships with them, with those manufacturers? Does the lab have those relationships? Have you built those relationships? I'm concerned about just the day-to-day selling.
No, we haven't directly contacted them yet. Obviously, the lab has kind of been in contact to see the demand to produce this, to decide if, like, in the designing of this.
They didn't work with one on that prototype, they just worked with themselves? Is that, how did the prototype come about?
I'm honestly not too sure. That'd be a question to ask our engineering staff.
What part of this is the sort of protected IP? What is in the patent that prevents the engine manufacturers from doing this themselves?
It's the way that these are all put together. If you read the patent itself covers INL's development of a few different natural gas vehicle technology. So the entire product, I guess, the way it's configured and putting together different parts is what really is patented. So they don't develop the cryogenic tubes. That's something you buy. It's just an input into the product. So the technology is the way, I guess, it's assembled, is what is patented.
So would you license the technology from ION?
We've talked to them about that. They don't want to, for the projections and the financials you see before you, it's a licensing fee. They said about $300,000 up front, 2% of our gross margin. But they said that there is also an option of buying the product outright, but they don't want to begin those negotiations quite yet.
So if you license it, would it be an exclusive license?
We haven't come that far, but we're assuming so, yes.
How old is the patent?
Patent was developed in 2002.
What do you make? What is your product? Is it a couple tubes and an instruction manual and you send it off?
Pretty
Just
much,
serious.
yeah. It's a simple product. It's
Yeah.
a simple product that has very beneficial results.
Yeah.
We're just going to
And where do you manufacture the tubes and assemble it?
So the product itself involves mostly assembling at the actual manufacturer site. That's why we're targeting the manufacturers, because they can do assemblage on site. So basically all we're doing is bringing in the parts, because it involves very minimal assemblage on our part. This is mostly distribution.
You get the parts from where?
We haven't contacted just people who develop these CryoGen 2s. We haven't actually contacted any suppliers at this point.
Do you know what your cost to buy those?
Yes, we have, the INL has told us that they have about per unit cost of $1,000 to produce. We believe just because of economies of scale, we can decrease that down to $800.
And they'll sell for what?
Oh, sell for what? $1,300 per unit.
So those numbers tell me that you're really not selling IP, you're just kind of marking up. That markup is a really low markup for something that has, significant IP.
Okay. And obviously the markups negotiable doesn't make sense. So at this point, we received that markup just by looking at industry standards and then adding an additional.
So what does that mean? Tell me about the industry standard.
So for the markup, we looked at a couple different companies. One main company that we analyzed for most of our financials is Westport Innovations. And they're the largest manufacturer of natural gas vehicles and natural gas engines in the U.S. So we looked at basically their cost of goods sold compared to their sales levels, which are roughly about 30%. And since our product will increase the efficiencies of theirs, we increased our markup up to 50%.
Anybody else doing this? I mean, obviously, if I look at the competitive world, we're trying to do here. Is anybody else using this technology or working on it? Do you know?
Not that we can do, but
How long do you think it would take in real life terms to get the business going from your model?
I believe it could potentially be very quick. I feel like if you sell one unit to one engine and they see the benefits of it, that you could potentially sell 100 of them to the same manufacturer.
But how long to that point? The reason I'm asking is because you have a utility or process patent that's already 10 years old, and if it takes you 3 years, the average product is about 2.5 to get to market on something like this. Then I'm looking at the lifespan of the product where you're trying to test.
Yeah, so in our financials, what we forecasted, and because we acknowledge that, and that's why we're really trying to pursue such a low startup cost, because we do need to start as quickly as possible. For our financials, we forecasted, I think, about 3 months of just direct and hard marketing, not really much revenue. And then from there, we, projected maybe this wasn't as realistic as we believe, that we would start sales at a fairly low level. And that would, at the start of year 2, our sales levels would be more equal to others in the industry.
So who's in charge of sales?
If you look at our,
Between the three?
between the 3 of us,
Yeah, raise your hand. Who's in charge of sales? First couple calls. What's the job title of the person we're going to call?
Well, we're going to call Westport Innovations, a manufacturing company, and basically take to them a sample of maybe a prototype of our product. And
Once you go to the organization, who's the buyer? Who's that person that actually makes the decision?
mainly the engineer and the design team. That's where we really want to get our engineer and our new sales specialist in contact with them directly, who can speak at a little bit of a higher level about the science and medium. So that's mainly why we are not identifying ourselves as a salesman.
That's relatively incomplete. Is there a compressor or something? You got a bunch of pipe going into a box going out. So give us a little information on what actually makes this happen.
so the cryogen tubes control the temperature. And so at a lower temperature, that decreases the pressure of the fuel puts it into that liquefied state. So that is really what controls the different pressures.
Temperature.
Yes.
And you input temperature out. What reduce it? How do you control the temperature?
Through the cryogenic tubes, is that not?
Well, natural gas
Natural
fuel tanks,
gas.
natural gas fuel tanks as they stand and operate currently are highly based on temperature, and they actually have to be stored at a very cold temperature. So it's already built into the tank, this whole temperature gauge. They just use a different process for the tubes while the fuel enters.
You guys, it doesn't seem like you're manufacturers or selling goods. I mean, what you've done is you see a solution to a problem. Why not spend the next 6 months or a year, or whatever it takes, to really nail down the product, prototype, get all the bugs worked out, and then license that technology to the manufacturer eventually? Why go through the brain damage of trying to source, supply, price, and market it up? Why not just get paid for the IP and then use a little sort of like?
And so we see that as someone already has the patent itself. So I guess we pursued this avenue because since they weren't able to license the IP, something direct like that might not be as feasible at this point. That's why we wanted to have this as a product, kind of build the demand and prove the capabilities of our product. And then essentially one of the people we look to sell our product to is actually an engine manufacturer, so eventually giving them the license.
So he's got to buy it, prove it while we put it in license.
Proof of model, we might be able to get some potential funds through the SBIR program, as long as it's an additional research on energy and transportation. What about the fueling stations themselves? Do those,
Yeah, it's a great question. So T. Boone Pickens is actually the major shareholder in Clean Fuels Corporation, and this is actually a new corporation that's really, really active lobbying in both DC and actively building these fueling stations. So it's primarily invested through billionaire T. Boone Pickens' own wealth.
is that something that's a done deal? Or is it,
Yeah.
It's like if there's no demand for it, we can add right now and just do that.
Sure, yeah, and actually he identified fueling station concern as his, he does have a vested interest in bringing natural gas to the United States. And so he identified the fueling station, the underdeveloped infrastructure, as one of his main goals. And so that is why he's actually pursuing the fueling station, America's Natural Gas Highway, as one of his own personal vendettas.
So asked him if he's interested in putting up the capital for 47%.
Yeah.
He's absolutely a potential investor.
What do you think the demand elasticity is for, based on the price of natural gas? And you mentioned 7 years, in the last 7 years, natural gas has been in the teens twice. And obviously they've had some new fines for proven reserves, but I mean, what happens if natural gas is not $2, but it's $4, $6? We've seen 15, but I'm assuming it's not going back there.
So what we did is we looked through, so first this is a, what's the source of this one? Right. So this is the forecasted price of natural gas versus price of diesel according to the
Energy Information
Energy Information Administration. So what we did is just based on this, we can kind of show you that Energy and Administration Information.
Yeah, Energy Information Administration.
Energy and Information Administration assumes that natural gas is going to remain fairly constant, and we believe that they have more. I guess they have more information than we do, so this is going to be a more accurate representation. This is what you're talking about here. The spikes, correct? This is the historical price of natural gas. Now, what we did for we kind of did a user break-even analysis just based on the mileage and / gallons used annually by these heavy-duty trucks, based on taking into account their average useful life. And so we found that as long as the price of LNG remains 0.6 cents less than diesel over the useful life of these vehicles, then they're still going to remain, and they're still going to gain $1,300 that they spent on this product.
What do you think the key risks to success, launch, and successful business? What are you most worried about?
I'd say I'm probably most worried about actually getting it out there as soon as possible. Like we said, it's a short window, and so in order for this product to really have benefits, it needs to get out there, it needs to be tested, it needs to.
And what he's saying, as we acknowledge here, you have to use useful life is about 15 years. And as these new companies are actively pursuing getting their fleet vehicles converted over to natural gas, we need to be there and installing this product or helping these vehicle manufacturers put out the best and most efficient engines. So we feel like the window of opportunity is very, very small, and we need to get started as quickly as possible.
Is Lab able to support you in the sales process as far as their engineers there to answer technical questions by your side?
As of now, yeah, they maintain just complete support, and we've been talking to the engineer on this project throughout the development of this business plan.
You indicated that public transportation, the garbage people, different companies, now they like have one vehicle they're testing, or they change the fleet, or do you have any idea how many vehicles are actually out there running to establish a line on this thing?
Well, so for instance, the Waste Management Incorporated out of Los Angeles, they operate over 500 waste vehicles around the city. And that's just, and then UPS.
Are they all on natural gas?
Yes, all 500, yeah.
UPS recently dedicated 1,000 fleet vehicles for 2012, and they look to expand that, as well as AT&T has converted a substantial amount of their
Anybody else working on this compressing measure?
Not that we've identified now.
Check, we have time for one quick question.
Well, thank you for your